Brutal murders push a woman to reflect on her life as well as the life of someone close to her. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today I want to talk about a short story because it is Short Story Tuesday, and today's short story is all about murder and loneliness. I am referring to Two Nameless Women by Cristina Rivera Garza, which was published in 2022. For those who don't know, Cristina Rivera Garza is a Mexican author who has been writing since the 1980s. They've written short stories as well as operas, or at least one opera, novels, and whatnot. They primarily write in Spanish, so most of their work is, or some of their work at least, is translated, including this short story collection. And Garza frequently writes about people on the fringes of society, and writes narratives that are, sort of confrontational or meant to show people in crisis, I think. And often her stories have unreliable narrators because of who she's writing about. I don't think you see that too much in this short story collection, but that has happened in other short stories that she's written. And she's won a number of awards for her work. I think this is probably one of the few times I might encounter her work, because most of it is originally in Spanish, and you got to find translations, which probably shouldn't be too hard if she's winning awards and whatnot. I found this at my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. They might have interesting short story collections. And so without further ado, let's talk about Two Nameless Women. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Two Nameless Women focuses on, of course, two nameless women. One of the women who is unnamed, she is visiting a friend while she is running, or while that friend is running water, and the friend, that second woman seems to have been doing it for a while because her hands are pruny and shriveled up, and the first woman is like, it looks like you've been skinning chickens. It seems like this second woman is a friend or a family member. It's a bit unclear, the relationship, but if I had to guess, I would say the first woman is the daughter of the second woman or something like that. And the second woman doesn't seem to be doing too well mentally, as they're, of course, running their hands under the water for a long time, but also hyper-fixated on news stories. And the second woman talks about some recent brutal murders that have taken place, where women have been having their hands, legs, and hair even chopped off by unknown murderers. The second woman keeps mentioning this during the visit. The first woman doesn't know how to react to that, but she just eats food with her, and then they chat until the second woman goes to bed. And the first woman just sits on the couch on the ottoman, and thinks about this second woman's life, how it seems to be lonely, family aren't really visiting, and they're focusing on these unfortunate events. And it seems to be a life that's waiting for a lot of people, and as they near their twilight years and whatnot. And then the first woman goes home and is making dinner, holding on to a knife and staring at the wall as they think about the murders as well, noting that these women, they had been saved or whatnot. They could be sitting on a comfortable ottoman instead of being dead, and that's really where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit worth talking about with this short story. One of the main themes that Garza is working with here is that of the lonely life. The second woman lives with no visitors. No one seems to visit. The family has either forgotten or that many family members have died, and they're not really visiting this person. I think the first woman is a family member, but it could just be a friend who's checking in on her. But the second woman doesn't really have a lot of visitors, so it's just a lonely life. There seems to be a factor of age, where they're no longer able to take care of themselves as they once did, and their mental health seems to be deteriorating. We see that early in the story with them running their hands under the water for a long time, and that causes them to shrivel up and look like skinned chickens, as the first woman says. So something going on there that's contributing, or maybe a factor of the lonely life. And then there's also the fear that's taking place, where this second woman can't seem to stop talking about the murders that have taken place. She's getting that from the TV. She's afraid of what she's seeing on the news, and there might, because she lives alone, there might be that fear that that's gonna be something that happens to her. That these mysterious murderers might come for a lonely old woman like her, and so that's an additional fear and an additional thing that's on the second woman's mind. The first woman seems to take pity on this second woman. But when she gets home, we see that this might be something that comes her way soon enough, like this lonely life where there isn't family member visiting or anything really waiting for her. And we kind of get that from context clues in the story. There's no mention of a husband or anything like that. No mention of her cooking for people when she gets home. It might be the case it just it didn't get mentioned or anything like that, but I have a feeling that was intentional, where this woman doesn't really have anything lined up for her, and so she sees this second woman as sort of like her future, a very unfortunate future. As well. Is there anyone going to be there for her when she's old and like running her hands under the water for a long amount of time? That remains to be seen, but it certainly doesn't look like a very positive, happy sort of outcome. And that might have something to do with the fact that she's a woman, like in this misogynistic society, which I'll get into in a few moments, but. Garza really highlighting the lonely life and how age makes it so this eventually comes for us all. Certainly not a very happy or peppy story here. And then, as I mentioned, this story is largely focused on women without directly addressing it. It is called Two Nameless Women, after all. And the second woman in the story seems fixated on these recent murders. It's one of the main things they seem to be talking about during this visit. And so there's like a harsh treatment of women in this society. The news is paying attention to it, and whatnot, but these women keep getting killed by this unseen murderer who's chopping off their arms, their legs, and even their hair. And the fact that it's the hair seems to be specifically focused on women, because sometimes men don't really have long enough hair for it to be chopped off or something like that. And so there is some misogyny here in society. It might be a cultural thing. Again, she's writing about Mexico, and I figured this might take place in Mexico. Not to say that Mexico is inherently sexist or anything like that, but if it's anything like America, it's not ideal. There do seem to be some limited options for women in this case, where like. If women aren't being targeted for harassment and murder, then they're living a life of loneliness. No one's really coming to visit them in their old age, unless they're perhaps married. But even after their husband dies, like they might not have someone to really rely on there or something like that. There's an interesting quote that comes at the end of the story. Allow me to read it to you. I fell into a chair. I looked at the wall. With a knife still in my right hand, inert like the statue I already was, I thought about how they hadn't even had the time to feel tired. I thought about how, had they been saved, had they survived, they could rest their legs on the thick leather of the ottoman in the middle of a lonesome room. So that's a really interesting quote, because the narrator, the first woman, is thinking about these women who died, and they're thinking, well, if they hadn't been killed, they could have been in this lonesome room resting, which might sound nice, but if you think about it, it's insinuating that the only two outcomes here are you either get murdered very violently in this misogynistic society, or you end up lonely. You end up all by yourself, which aren't two great outcomes. Like, sure, if you're lonely, you're still alive and you're not being, violently murdered or anything like that. But it's like the loneliness is harsh. It's not ideal, no, and it's going to contribute to some poor mental health maybe down the road. Is the loneliness due to misogyny in the first place? How the society doesn't really view women with respect if they're old and whatnot. I mean, that might be what Garza's trying to get at here. And then obviously there are psychological effects, which I've alluded to, of this loneliness, of this misogyny, where you only think about either how you're going to end up alone or how you're going to you might be murdered if you turn down the wrong alley, or if someone catches you because other women are being murdered. Kind of like a torment going on in this society. Certainly not a healthy place to live. And so I think, again, in addition to being lonely, like there's these effects of living in a misogynistic society. Not a great place to live there. I just think Garza's really doing a lot of work here to sort of highlight a large problem that exists in this society, maybe in the society that she's looking around and seeing for herself. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Two Nameless Women by Cristina Garza. Pretty interesting short story. I think most of the stories in this collection are fine, but they don't really stand out to me in particular. They might be fun to check out from your local library to get some of that Mexican, reading experience. But for the most part, I wouldn't say there's anything that, grabbed my attention and forced me to really want to pay attention and find more of this writer. That said, if I ever do come across her in the future, I'll probably be sure to give it a read or something like that. If you have any things to say about my review here or about what I just talked about, let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this story or Cristina Garza if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and growing old and lonely travels. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you, but farewell.